Okay, so the Megac Corporation has an ownership stake in the Sysync. So, when there are relations, right? This is a non-math kind of a two-part analysis, right? So when there is a relation, we are going to draw out the relation. So then we'll have a better idea of what is related to what, right? So we know that we are going to say, okay, so let's say when one corporation has a stake in another, so we'll write that this has a stake in Sysync. We write it like this. Doesn't matter, whatever works for you, right? The Exino Corporation has an ownership stake in the Naturo. Okay, so E has stake in Naturo. The Green Valley has an ownership stake in Exino. So here is my green. I think I've started from little ahead. This won't work. So I say my E is here, N is here, here is my G. Then the Green Valley has an X, right? The Genix Corporation has, and the Genix and the Sysync both have ownership stake in Green Valley. So Genix and Sysync. So Sysync is over here. So I'll bring my Sysync here. And of course, M comes automatically then, right? So here is my M, and I'm also given that Genix also has an ownership stake in Green Valley. Now, further, if Corporation A has an ownership stake in Corporation B, then Corporation A has an ownership stake in all the corporations that Corporation B has an ownership stake in. So essentially, it just means that, like, for example, if M has a stake in S, then M has a stake in all the others as well, right? Fair enough. But if Corporation A has an ownership stake in B, then B cannot have an ownership stake in A. So then it is not possible that G has a stake in J, for example, because J already has a stake in G, yeah? Okay, now assume that the information provided is accurate, blah, blah, blah. Select for Megac for the listed corporation that Megac could acquire a first-time ownership stake in and select Genix for the listed that Genix could acquire a first time. So what I need over here, for example, for Megac, is that corporation where Mega can get a first time ownership stake. Now, from the relations, I see that Mega Corporation already has ownership stake in all these companies, right? Because it has ownership stake in Sysync, and Sysync has ownership stake in G, which has ownership stake. So then, by that rule, Mega Corporation has ownership stake in all these corporations. The only one which is left is Genix, right? So then I say, all right, so Mega can get a stake in Genix, but now I need to do the same thing for Genix, that in which corporation can Genix buy a first time ownership stake. Now Genix already has in G, E, and N, right? Because all these Genix already has a stake in these. It doesn't have a stake in M or S, so we can select one of these two. I don't have S at all, Sysync over here, but I do have Megac. And so then I will, for Genix, I'm going to select Megac, right? Now, the point of confusion, a common error, or a trap, or whatever you may call it, which does happen quite often over here, is that people feel that, okay, I have been given in the question that if Corporation A has an ownership stake, then Corporation B cannot have an ownership stake in A, right? So they say that how come for Megac we can select Genix and for Genix we can select Megac? This is a conflict, right? Here I'm saying that A can take an ownership in B and B can take an ownership in A, and that doesn't work. So guys, this question is not demanding that the options be jointly consistent. Read carefully. Yeah, joint consistency is not required over here. These are hypothetical. They're talking about two hypothetical cases. Currently, this is the scenario only, right? Neither does Megac have in Genix, nor does Genix have in Megac. Currently, no one has in any. Now, one situation, select for the listed corporation could acquire a first-time ownership stake in, and for this select that it could acquire. And so these are two independent hypothetical situations. I do not need them to be jointly consistent. It is not given that they are just because we get so used to it being jointly consistent. Often that jointly consistent word is written over there. So that is why we forget to see that here we don't need it to be jointly consistent. Yeah, these are two separate hypothetical. My question, this part is not related to this part. Yeah, these are not happening simultaneously. Do you understand? So you have to be careful whether you are asked to get joint consistency in the options, or whether they are independent, whether they don't need any joint consistency. Then it works. It doesn't matter. These are just two totally separate options. This is what I am using to get my this answer, and this is the only thing that I'm using to get my this answer. I'm not using any data from here. They don't need to be jointly consistent. Is that clear? Is this point very clear? Yeah, if they ask for joint consistency, then of course they'll need to give you S sysync as well, right? So that for J, I could pick up sysync, right? Because for M, I have no other option but to pick up Genix. So I'll need to pick up Genix for M. And then they'll need to give me then sysync as well, because then for J, I'll need to pick up sysync, right?